I think we're all coming from the same direction. We want to have conversations. We don't want to interview. And that made a lot of sense for that series that I was doing.
A few of us do interview shows. A few of us don't for one reason or another. What's everybody's thoughts on that? Why or why not? Let's go. Alec, you're on a few interview shows.
Yes, I've been a guest on a few, and then obviously there's my my podcast, which is an interview show. Although I've not done any recording for that recently. That's also in the Q2 goals as well, to start doing more of those interviews. But there's two sides of it, really. I mean, the appearing on other people's shows is a great way to reach a wider audience, and if you've got something to offer, it's also a great way to build your email list. So just this last week, I was on the stream show on the Ecamm channel, and part of that was, I had a PDF digital download to offer along with that. And so there you're reaching out to an audience that is beyond your audience. And so, that picked up, over 20 new contacts in my email database that I can follow up with, having provided value in my funnel to then, offer them something further down the line. So it does really work as a way to reach a wider audience. Hopefully, attract some more people over to what I'm doing as well. From the interviewer side, I really like doing these because I'm basically interviewing people that I want to speak to and learn from as well. So all the conversations I've had have been with people that I've really admired, respected, and feel that I can learn something from them just as much as I know all of my audience can. And then it's also obviously giving them a platform to put those people in front of in front of my audience, however big or small that might be comparatively. The thumbnail that I have for my live streamer backstage podcast is a spotlight on the person, and I do very much see it like that. I know some people do interview shows where it almost seems like as much of self-promotion as it is about the guest, whereas I always feel like the guest should be on the platform and then given the spotlight. So that was my thinking behind that. But I've learned so much from all the people that I've interviewed, and things that I wouldn't have necessarily discovered otherwise. And, for example, one of the first people I interviewed was Dr. Elo, because I'd been impressed by the way that he was dealing with his social media management and, posting. And so I wanted to really, inquire from him as to how he was doing all this. And I picked up loads of great tips from him that I then implemented in my stuff. And it's been the same with every single person I've interviewed. There's always been one key takeaway that I've then tried to implement in my own stuff to make my stuff better, and asking for book recommendations from them as well. Loads of great reading have come out of it. So I just love it, really. I think it's a really great win-win situation for the interviewer and the interview guest. And obviously bringing a guest on your own show, they're going to potentially be bringing their audience over to your stuff as well. So it really is a two-way thing as far as I view it.
A couple of things. You do those social media posts that feature your guests. Do you find them sharing it out as much as you'd like them to?
Yeah, I do find that people are sharing those for sure. Yeah. And I don't have any expectation that they're going to do it in terms of, making it a requirement or anything like that. But yeah, I do find that guests will always want to, show when they're on somebody else's thing. So I do get them sharing the upcoming thing, first of all. But then when I create those posts with quotes, I think everyone loves to be quoted secretly. So having something with their picture on it and their quote, I do find that people will share those things out.
Does it take a lot of preparation on your part to do an interview show?
Well, it's all people that I'm not interviewing people cold, as it were. They're all people that I've got a lot of admiration and respect for in any case. So I've already coming into it with, questions that I think that I want to ask them, or, an idea of what it is specifically that I want to speak to them about. So it doesn't really take a huge amount of preparation, apart from just the mechanics of, back and forth. And I've tried to automate that as much as possible in terms of getting all the information from them and that kind of thing. No, I always go into it very much as a case of I'm having a conversation. I've been on some interview shows where it's the same as that, but I've been on others where, they will ask for they will even ask me to give them 5 questions to ask or 10 questions to ask, so that I'm prepping them for how to ask me. I'm not a fan of that approach at all, because whilst it, can give you a structure as the interviewer, I much prefer just things to run as a conversation and then take it wherever the conversation goes. And that's the way that I approach it as an interviewer as well.
I like interviews that are more conversational like that, because based on what somebody says, then the next question is totally different depending on the answer. So
yes, yeah,
it's always a much better show. It feels like a much better show. Michelle, I know you just did an interview with some people. How'd that go?
It was fun. It was really fun. So I'm dipping my toe in the water there, it was really good. I learned a lot from Alec because I had to, set up my run-up show. I had to get everything ready so that they would know what was happening and how we were going to do everything. So that was a really good experience. Also, making sure that I run a tight ship and then that I get all the things that I need in order to actually do the interview. So, I learned quite a bit. I stalked your website, Alec, so that I could get all the little things that I needed. So now I have an opportunity to be interviewed on the other hand. And so now I'm seeing some, other people's styles of how they do their press. As a matter of fact, this thing that I'm speaking at, there was a literal contract. So I was like, swiping that, which was kind of nice, because they talked about, like social media and like who owns it, that kind of stuff and all of that. And it was very thorough. And so the group that I'm going to be talking, on this particular interview, it was pretty similar to what I did in mine. However, there's a contract. There were, like other like deadlines. Everything was spelled out in the, there's a contract to even be a speaker. You sign that. Once you sign that, then the next thing would be like, okay, here are your deadlines. And we need these things in by this date, these things in by that date, any promotional information, whatever. Here's a group that we're going to be putting everything in. Everything was written. Everything was done.
Do they restrict you from doing stuff with the content, or can you do whatever you want with the stuff you say?
Well, they want you to share it and that kind of stuff. And so, it's
Okay.
It's generic enough that you can, anyone from any industry can take the name and put their name in there, that kind of thing or what have you. And everything is already pre-done, which to me spoke to me because I am such a planner, and I was like, oh, wow, I can definitely use that. So it was a different experience. And I love doing this. I had an opportunity to be on a couple of different shows, like 2 other shows on Dr. Elo's show, and he sent his run-up show ahead of time. It was more, more conversational. That interview was more conversational. And then I had another show that I was on, and there was some information up front, but never a contract, or stuff like that. So I think it's really fun being able to kind of dip my toe in the water, see what other people are doing, and see what works, and see how I would then change and shift and pivot, how I want to do it. I'd love to be able to have like once a month, have some expert come on my channel and just kind of talk from their POV, of how things are going in the industry that I'm in. And so it was really nice to be able to do that and see how that worked and, get the direct feedback from how everything turned out. But the more I'm exposed to it, the more I can see, oh, wow, this is great. And how, how people make a business out of this, and Keely had mentioned, sometimes you gotta, focus on some good stuff so that you can have some revenue coming in. But it was kind of interesting how it all turned out. I loved it. And, I really grew and learned.
Keely, what's your interview experience?
Well, I started out live streaming by interviewing, actually, now that I think about it. Back in 2020, I started doing an umpire at home series where I would talk to umpires from all around the world at home, COVID, and we would go through not an entire match, but we'd go through highlights of a match, and they would talk over their perspective of how things were going and how that call happened and things like that. And I mean, it was rough as I had umpires with no headphones on. I had poor lighting. and bad audio and all that kind of stuff. And then I was also terrible. So it was really fun because it was a great way to be able to flex the muscles and start building that up. But it is a lot of work. And especially because I was trying to do that every week. And then I introduced What Up Wednesdays, which was me just sort of talking about umpiring concepts and through a few clips. And then I was throwing a produced video. I mean, I was doing so much content that it was a lot of work. And the interviews actually fell off because trying to find the guest, get their commitment, and then to try to start imposing conditions like, all right, you're going to wear headphones, right? And they're like, no. I'm like, yes, you are. So that sort of started throwing up some obstacles for me, and there was some friction there, so I stopped doing them as often. I did do one last week, which was really kind of fun with FH umpires, where an umpire had given me feedback privately by DM, just out of the blue, and said, hey, I wanted you to know that I started umpiring 3 weeks ago. I won umpire the tournament at my first under 14 IPT tournament, and I binge watched your content for a week before I went to this tournament. And that's how I learned how to umpire, and I turned into umpire the tournament.
That is pretty cool.
Oh my God. So I cried, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. And he also said, I'm a coach who was really hard on umpires. Really hard. I used to yell and scream, and I'm 6'5", and used to scare the crap out of them. So he had this really amazing story to tell about how he went from being the angry coach to the reluctant umpire to the umpire who's so excited about what he does now. He had to reach out to me and share a story. So I was like, you're coming on What Up Wednesday, and we're going to talk for half hour, 45 minutes. And it was such a nice conversation. And, you know, he brought out his sort of fan club from South Africa, the people that he'd worked with. And it reminded me of just how valuable it is to do interviews, and that maybe I should work a little bit harder to reintroduce them back into that routine. But, and then from the interviewee side, I've done a ton of interviews as Discord coach. And I think the most valuable thing for me coming out of that is listening to the questions that I'm being asked, not just by, you know, live chat or whoever happened to be there, but by the interviewer and what they don't understand, what they want to know about, what they're curious about, what their fears are. This is a perspective. I'm pretending or thinking this is a prospective client. So these are where their pain points are. This is where their hesitations are. These are the objections that I need to address if I'm going to bring somebody just like this on as a client. So that's been the most valuable thing for me, not necessarily the reach or the numbers or anything like that. It's what I've been able to learn from being interviewed by these people. So that's been really great.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Rob, what do you have to add to this?
I'd like to say something intelligent, but honestly, you know, in terms of interviews for me, I'm talked to a lot and I speak a lot, but I don't, I haven't fallen into the need to interview people for a while. And so, it's just making sure that on those topics that I'm normally asked to speak on, and I've spoken to 4 different groups in the last month in person. It's not, it's not been in the interview format, so it's just not something that I touch on.
I get it. Dina, I was on your show and you interviewed me while we made chicken and cauliflower. I remember that.
And I thought of you this morning when I was having that for lunch.
Oh my God, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had the same thing for lunch. I didn't have cauliflower though. I didn't have cauliflower, but I did have chicken thighs. But anyway, but you've had some fun people on your show.
Yeah, I've had some good people on the show. I tried to approach mine a little. I think we're all coming from the same direction. We want to have conversations. We don't want to interview, and that made a lot of sense for that series that I was doing. What was it called? At the Counter. So
yeah.
The whole premise of the show is everyone's at the counter cooking with me, having a drink, that kind of thing. But I really wanted those episodes to feel like that person was sitting in here in the kitchen with me, and the other audience was just watching the conversation. And I think we did all right on that. I did 6 of those. I started to reach out beyond content creators to get guests, and a lot of people just weren't comfortable.
Weird.
So I need to revisit that. And there was those that were like, but I don't have
like
the tech.
it feels like you did a lot more than 6, though. It feels like it. I mean, maybe you didn't, but it feels like you did a lot more. I don't know. Maybe that's
Alec, Rich, Michelle, Doc, Collie, and
okay,
Mary Lou.
6.
6.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And plus, you had Sherry in there live.
Yeah, Sherry's been in live, so 7.
Michelle.
And that one was easy to feel like we were just talking because we were just talking.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm a great interviewer. And the times that I have been interviewed, it's been more about the studio, I think, than what it is I do, which is totally fine with me. I don't mind.
Yeah.
Little known secret, might be news to you guys even. I don't like the interview shows that have more than 2 people on them. So, sorry. Yeah, but it's stressful for me for some reason to watch this many people. But hey, everybody's allowed to like what they like. I'll participate. It's good to be on both sides. That's the one thing that I want to add is I learned a lot about my own show when I was preparing to have a guest on the show. And I think I probably did grow a little, having to be on, what was I on? Meet the Fam with Ecamm. Yeah. And then I was a podcast guest for Foodie Flashback. So yeah, you learn a lot about how you can do things once you're sitting in the hot seat. So that's it.
The only interviews I've been on, I was in Doc's interview class a month ago, whenever that was. And it was 4 weeks of a cohort where it was basically a Zoom call where we all just talked about interviews for a couple hours on a Saturday. And he would speak a little bit at the beginning and then pair people up. You interview this one and you interview this one and that kind of stuff. I got stuck with, not stuck. I got to interview Paul Duncan, and I actually know a little bit about Paul, how he lives in San Francisco and he's big into his grandparents and things like that. So I was able to, and his cat and a few different things that I was able to talk to him about for 5 minutes. So it was kind of cool. I imagine going in, a lot of people didn't know anybody. They just went in cold. Like the girl that interviewed me didn't know crap about me except for my name on the screen. And had to come up with something for 5 minutes. So it was hot. Talk about hot seat. That was a hot seat. The other interview I was on, though, I was on that stream show too. I was on the first episode of it, of Strick and Brandt's thing when they started it. And there was a BTS thing where we walked around and saw the office and things like that. I mean, it wasn't a big thing, but it was fun. It was fun to do. But it's, I don't know if I need to be interviewed. For my business, I don't think I need to interview people at all. Maybe I do. Maybe that would help. Maybe I could get some printers in here or some apparel people or some drinkware people or something and do a show like that. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Maybe that's something I could add to my workload, my current workflow. Stick another live stream in there or something. I don't know.
That sounds really interesting. You interviewing, different people that you sort of work with and being able to say, find out what they're making that really seems to be working when it gets into the ultimate customer's hands, or this is the way to design a logo that's really going to work on these kind of products. If they're apparel printers, like these really work on t-shirts, or here's some new ideas that are happening. So as a business owner, that would be interesting to me. And I would be like, yeah, tell me more about this, because this sounds fascinating.
Cool. Yeah, maybe I will do that. It's something it just occurred to me. I mean, before this recording, I was saying I really don't do interviews, but as we're sitting here talking, I could probably do it and think of something valid to say and have something that works.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned from the interview with that I did with the Canva experts was having a variety type show. that was part of their journey. So, I was kind of getting to know them, trying to figure out what their journey was. And they had a specific core buyer persona, for their show. However, it morphed as they grew. And so now they're doing more tech stuff, more AI stuff, because of course it's hot, doing interviews and stuff like that. And one of the key takeaways I learned in that interview was, to don't be afraid to kind of shift a little bit, because, we're making content. We're out here making content for our audiences and stuff like that. And so, things might get a little stale, and don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. And so that was one of the things that they did. They kind of kept their finger on the pulse of what was going on in their community. And so as things kind of, developed or whatever, they jump on it. And because they were early adopters for whatever they were talking about, or maybe they interviewed somebody, or maybe it was something that was maybe just a little bit different from what their channel was about, people loved it and their channel grew. So, I'm taking a page from that book, and, not afraid to maybe try something new. If it worked, great. If it doesn't, all right, pivot, we'll do something different. So, and to me, it's a skill building thing, because as a content creator, you're trying to, figure out what it is that your people want. And, I think being exposed to all of these different things builds skills, and you could definitely use it in whatever it is that you're doing. So, I kind of like the idea.
Thanks for hopping on to our Creators Pod. If you enjoyed it, tell your friends. If you didn't like it, tell your friends. We'd love a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out our YouTube channel, Creators Pod. The Creators Pod is produced by C22 Media. Alec Johnson, Dina Taylor, Keely Dunn, Michelle Lawrence, Rob Vaules, and me, Rich Green. Thanks.
Good work on our 6-person interview show. Well done.